Welcome back. This lecture we're going to be covering the battle for the mind. What do I mean by that? Well, I started to discuss some of the things and uncover some of them in the poison in the passion of the Christ. There's a war on at the moment between the forces of good and evil, and this war is a continuation of the war that took place in heaven. Now, we need to understand that there certain things can have effect subconsciously, even if we don't cognitively know about it. And this is why the Bible over and over and over again warns about how we should protect and what we should do to secure our minds. Matthew 22 verse 37 is one of those examples. Read it with me. It says, Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. Acts 17:11 says, These were more noble than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness of mind and searched the scriptures daily whether those things were so. Let's go through all these texts one after the other, and then you'll understand how this all fits together. Romans 12 verse 2 says, And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. 1 Peter 1:13, Wherefore gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and hope to the end for the grace that is to be brought unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. And Hebrews explains why we need to protect our minds. Hebrews 8 verse 10. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put the laws into their mind and write them in the hearts. And I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And then 1 Corinthians 2:16 says, For who hath known the mind of the Lord, that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. Now that's a very difficult thing, to have the mind of Christ. It's not an easy thing. It's something that we have to work on constantly. Titus 1:15 says, Unto the pure all things are pure, but unto them that are defiled and unbelieving is nothing pure. But even their mind and conscience is defiled. You see, if Satan can twist our minds or infiltrate them, then he can twist our understanding and infiltrate that as well. Today, we are surrounded by many, many, many forms of sensory stimulation, of which the media is just, or the media as in television and the news, etc., is just one method. Albert Einstein once said, The ruling class has the schools and press under its thumb. This enables it to sway the emotions of the masses. So somehow the ruling class is able to configure the information in such a way that you receive what you're supposed to receive. In other words, he who's in control will feed you what they want to feed you. Is this possible? Well, the Commission on the Freedom of Press states the following. It says, The owners and managers of the press determine which person, which facts, and which version of the facts, and which ideas shall reach the public. So that's interesting. That was recognized by Einstein and confirmed in the Commission on the Freedom of Press. One of the ways that we can just look into this and how does this all work, one version of the facts, one example I can use is overpopulation. I'd like to put up some graphics for you to see that you can determine for yourself whether this idea of overpopulation is as urgent as what it's made out to be. Overpopulation is a term that is spread all over the world, that we somehow need to watch the population of the world because it is expanding and booming and there's no more space left. Have a look at this graphic. This is an image of the world as we know it, the layout of the continents. According to the CIA, the estimated population at July 2007 was 6.602 billion people. So it's just over 6 billion people on Earth. Now, 6.6 billion people, let's just analyze that concept and say, how much space would we need for 6.6 billion people? Well, we lived on a property that was 50 meters by 50 meters, 2,500 square meters in other words. That's quite a large property. So let's take that for the average 4-member family. 50 meters by 50 meters, 2,500 square meters per 4-member family. If you were to divide that, you would come to 625 square meters per person. Now, you take 6.6 billion people and you multiply it by 625 square meters per person, you come to an enormous figure of 4,125 billion square meters. Now you divide this and it works out to 4.125 million square kilometers. That calculation is a simple way of illustrating what space would be needed to house a population of 6.6 billion people if each one was given 625 square meters. I've got 625, you've got 625, your wife has got 625 square meters for themselves. So how much is 4 million square kilometers? Well, look at this. If I add South Africa, which is 1.2 million square kilometers, with Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Zambia, Lesotho, and Swaziland, I've got a total of 4.6 million square kilometers. That's that area down there. I've got 10% extra in store, and I can, according to that calculation of 6.6 billion people, I can fit the entire population into the southern tip of Africa. But where does this idea of population come from? Overpopulation, that is. It comes from the idea of the ruling class being able to channel the version of information that they want to feed you into your living room. I can, just in that area alone, put 4.6 million square kilometers to side, which will easily house the population with 10% to spare, so you'd have 700 square meters per person instead of 625. Out of a total of 149 million square kilometers, we've only used 4.5 million. This is the type of way information is channeled according to somebody's own perception or agenda. Okay, so how does this all work and where does the media fit into this? Well, the media is the tool which is used to soften our minds, as we've just explained and showed in The Poison in the Passion of the Christ in the previous lecture. Our minds actively accept new ideas which previously would have been maybe uncomfortable. Over a period of time, we start to acknowledge these as fact. There are two forces in the world: evil and good. The same way from heaven, that happened in heaven, there were two forces in heaven and that caused war. Now there's two forces on earth and the war continues, but it's a secret war. Jesus has a network, and his network is a network of information and of influence. This network is in direct opposition and contrast to Satan's network. He also has a network. Jesus' network is split into two major sections. Firstly, service to God, which is a fulfillment of what you would have done in the holy place in the Old Testament sanctuary. And then service to man, which is go and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is the commandment that's been given to us. Read my words, search the scriptures, study the word, and take it to the world. Two main areas of focus, if you like, for the word of God and as regards Jesus' network. So what about Satan's network? Well, you see, this is where the problem is. Satan's network, his pie graph, is split up into many, many areas. I'm going to be discussing some of them in this lecture. But let me just run quickly through some examples and then it'll make sense towards the end of the lecture. Sport is one of them. Magazines. It's much easier today to read Heat magazine or People magazine or You magazine rather than studying the Word of God. Sport also, it's quite easy to sit back and watch whatever on TV, some sporting event, rather than spending time turning off the telly and reading the Word of God. Sex and pornography is an example. Music is an example of keeping especially the young people busy. What about raves and parties and these nightclub ideas? Cell phones. Have you seen how busy our young people are? The new generation that's just coming through. Cell phones absorb almost 100% of their time. What about drugs? Do drugs lead you to Christ or away from Christ? Movies, food, you can carry on and on. The internet, PCs and keeping busy with computer games. How many times do you have to pull your child away from the computer games? How often do we have to try and turn off the TV to get them away? What about homosexuality? Does that lead you towards God or away from God? What about spiritualism? Does it lead you towards God or away from God? What about secret societies? We've started at the bottom and we've worked our way through to being a master mason. Well, you're only 3 degrees up the very long ladder of 33 degrees. And usually you only find out at the 33rd degree what's really going on. Even work can be a challenge. Not because it's a burden for us physically, which that it is, but taking you possibly away from the Lord. Where you get so busy and so absorbed that you don't have time to read and study the Word of God. And then also wealth and influence. As a result, usually of hard work, we get so absorbed in the success of our hard work that we enjoy it more than we should be just acknowledging it as a part of the success. You see, Jesus has a network and he's trying to draw us deeper into evangelizing and studying his word. Satan has a network and he's got all these various splinter ideas, and it also draws us away and deeper into God's word. God's word in its own way, the deeper you get involved, the more excitable you come. In a way, you become almost addicted to having that close association to God. The same way Satan draws people in, and people become addicted to food, to spiritualism, to television, to movies, to internet, PC, whatever it is, music. So let's look at this. This is the battle for the mind. One force asking you to come this way, and one force pulling you that way. This force of Jesus Christ not using the media to entice your senses, to stimulate you, to feel that you have an association to God, and this one doing exactly that. Using every means, whether it's music or video, audio, whatever types of media, to pull people in, to feel excitement and have that sensory stimulation. Well, let's start off with sport. What about sport? Where does sport come from, and how can it be used by Satan? Well, we just need to go back in the lectures and analyze what was the war in heaven. It was Satan wanting to become God, and his fulfillment of that on earth would be, according to Ezekiel, either you face west and face the Shekinah glory and you worship God in the Holy of Holies, or you face east and you worship God according to sun worship. Well, Exodus 32 verses 2 to 6 explain, "And Aaron said to them, break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives and of your sons and of your daughters, and bring them to me." He made it a molten calf. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow is a feast to Jehovah." And they rose up early on the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought in the peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink, and they rose up to play. This is an age-old problem where the association between food and drink and having some entertainment still exists today. So let's ask an authority, and I'm not going to tell you who this is. Where does sport come from? What are the origins of sport? Let's just take polo as an example. Polo, according to the source, was well known to the Persians and restored to its original sun game significance by Akbar. Scoring a goal with the sun ball was equated with a triumph of light over darkness, good over evil. The ball is a sun symbol in all such sports, such as football, hockey, baseball, and cricket. Baseball is related to the sun in the sundial shape and pattern of the field, as well as its rules and playing and scoring. Like all sports, baseball also embodies the sun's seasonal cycles in much the same way as the ancient ceremonial contests were held as part of fertility rites. Does this sound now familiar, now that you're starting to understand the language? Fertility rites, sun game, the generative principle. Who quoted this? Where does this come from? The sun game of polo and the sun ball, pointing at hockey and cricket and soccer and baseball, all playing with the sun ball or the symbol of the sun. Who quoted that? Well, there it is. UNESCO, page 87 and 88, the sun in myth and art. Let's ask them again, what else do you know about sport? They say, Sumerian Gilgamesh story inscribed in cuneiform tablets narrates how the sporting equipment, a stick and a ring or a ball, which Gilgamesh had carved out of an uprooted tree, had fallen into the netherworld as he began oppressing his people by repeated athletic competitions. And how eventually it was the sun god who opened a hole in the ground in order to recover them. Listen to what it says. The Olympic torch, which the runner carries to mark the sun's cyclic movement through the Olympiad, the 4-year period until the next games, is also celebrated to the sun's cyclic rhythm, first celebrated in Greece. The games were ceremonial contests in honor of Zeus. Wow! So it's not only in the Gilgamesh story where they speak about sun worship, it was the sun god that saved them. Not only that, secondly, it is the Olympic torch, which is the embodiment that the Kara runs of the sun worship system. And that this sun worship system, through its cyclicity of every 4 years, is actually reminding people about the first games that were done in the honor of Zeus. Do you remember when we did the 7 trumpets and the 7 seals, and we did the 7 churches? Do you remember there was a church where the Lord said, this is the seat of Satan, where Satan has his home? Well, that was a temple to Zeus. Who says this? UNESCO. Here we have an image of the sun, moon, and other planets floating above the head or overhead the 1992 Barcelona Games. The sun's association with sports predates the deities Heracles and Apollo in Greece, as is evident from the epic tale of the Sumerian hero Gilgamesh. This idea of sun being involved, you might be at the Olympic Games watching the opening ceremony and you don't have a clue. The people that are running the system, however, do. They know that they are getting people involved in sun worship. In ancient times, you take Rome as an example. The emperor, who was believed to be a reincarnation of the sun god, which is exactly what the pharaoh used to be, the emperor would have great sporting events where the sun god would be pleased by certain things that took place on the field or on the ground where they were playing. This idea continues today. If you think about it carefully, what do you have today that's different to the time of Rome? Well, not much, because you have the sun god involved, you have the sun ball according to UNESCO, you have the sun that you're playing with, and you've got 100,000 screaming people who are all excited about, well, whatever the sport's going on. What happens if you take the cricket ball away from a cricket match? What happens? Well, nothing. That's the point. What happens if you take the rugby ball away from the World Cup rugby? Nothing, except that you've got 100,000 idiots that haven't got anything to shout about. Same with soccer, same with hockey, same with any sport. You see, they are playing around with the sun in ancient times. It's just been remodeled and refocused so that we don't understand that. And somehow we're going to have to look at the Baal Hadad. Remember that semicircle with the star in it, that symbol of sun worship? Well, this is how sport has evolved over time to become something which is now widely accepted, that we can, on the weekends, enjoy this sun worship ceremony. And that's what it is, really, where the Olympic torch comes in and people are saying, wow, that's wonderful, the Olympic torch has traveled all around the world. Well, that's a symbol of sun worship. That's why UNESCO says the following. They say, as in sport, the sun is omnipresent on practically all aspects of life, whether it be art, architecture, philosophy, religion, festivals, folklore, dance, or music. Every morning, a pagan god of the day wakes us up. For the Romans in the early centuries of the Christian era, they named it after the 7 planets: Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. So depending which day you stand up, the pagan god is welcoming you. That's why Christianity today wakes up on the Sunday and goes to church, because it's the pagan god which has been infiltrated and embedded inside Christianity. So let's have a look at some of these symbols. And what I'm going to be showing you in this lecture is how to understand the language. They don't want you to know the language because it helps them to continue doing things which will allow them to do things that you won't know. Let's use an example. Imagine you are an English-speaking individual, which I'm assuming you are because you can understand me. Not too many of us can understand Chinese. Now, you walk into a restaurant and you sit next to a Chinese couple who are having a heated debate in Chinese. How much of their language or how much of their conversation do you understand? Well, not much. Until what? Until you learn the language. The same people walk into the same restaurant, the same debate is going on, except I now understand Chinese. How much do I now understand of their language or of their conversation? Pretty much all of it, depending on the fluentness of my ability in Chinese. The same way, I'm going to be teaching you a language through this lecture that you can see the battle for the mind and how these things will now start to manifest themselves, and you'll recognize how infiltrated this deception really is. Let's go and have a look at the Olympic Games and see, can we see somewhere in the system, can we somehow, somewhere see either the Baal Hadad or sun worship in the system? Let's have a look. These are just some of the many symbols which are available for the Olympics around the world. South Korea, the triple yin-yang, that's a sun symbol, the spinning sun. Barcelona 92, Baal Hadad. Atlanta 1996, can you see the Baal Hadad? Sydney 2000, Baal Hadad. Athens 2004, Baal Hadad. Cape Town 2004, Candidate City, Baal Hadad. And there's, interestingly enough, a red dot. We'll look into that a bit later. What about this FIFA World Cup? Well, we've just had this wonderful World Cup that's gone on, and man, it's been a most amazing time, supposedly, and people have enjoyed themselves. Well, stop for a moment and let's just rewind to 2006 and go to the European Soccer World Cup, or at least the Soccer World Cup that was in Germany. Can you remember what the symbol was? Well, there it is. Can you see on the left? Baal Hadad. And Korea, Japan in 2002? Baal Hadad. Even the trophy which is so revered and held up is a Baal Hadad, where the goddess is holding up either the chalice or the world like Atlas. Have a look, 1962, what the cup was that they used to hold up. See, this is the symbol of the goddess of sport. The sun worship symbol which is held up for all to be revered. Everybody chasing after some sun worship system. Okay, so that's now certain types of sport. What about other sports? Well, you just have to go into something like World Soccer, and you see Manchester United that has got the dragon on their symbol, the little trident with the three-pitched fork, and you've got chicanes and all types of Masonic symbols, 1896, various things on these world sport. Well, I just want to take you for a moment to Portsmouth, the Portsmouth Football Club. This is the symbol that they had throughout the years. Heaven's light, our guide. Why on earth would Portsmouth Football Club have that as their symbol? Does it look now familiar to you? Can you see the Baal Hadad in there? Are you able to identify heaven's light, our guide? This is the star of heaven. You just have to look at the 33-degree Luciferian Freemasonry Shriner hat to see that it's the same thing. The Baal Hadad of ancient worship in Freemasonry is the same as what Portsmouth Football Club have got. And what did they do? 1970s, they changed their symbol. There it is in black and white. And guess what? They changed it again, and look what it is today. 100% aligned with sun worship? Absolutely. Let's look at other aspects. What about the world media? Are there any signals or hidden messages in the world media? Absolutely. Sometimes certain things are more well known than others. This, as an example, is a perfect description of the Queen, or depiction of the Queen and all the royal entourage dressed in black with the Pope in white. Whenever people go and visit the papacy, they have to acknowledge him as the superior power, or the one without fault or without sin. And that is why even the Queen will dress in black. How is this possible? Is he more powerful than them? Well, in the hidden and the secret structures, there are certain things that take place. Even the Queen, who is known as the Queen of the Bilderbergers, she has to dress in black in order to acknowledge the authority structure that is the papacy. What about Prince Charles, dressed in black in front of the Pope? Even today, in modern times, when people go and visit Pope Benedict, either in very dark outfits or in black. These are the things which are recognized by the people who understand the language. Pope Benedict the other day was in the mosque, in a Muslim mosque where he prayed, and interestingly, the entire entourage is all dressed in dark, and he's the only one with the other religious leaders that are dressed in light. An acknowledgement and a respect of power. But this can't be, surely not, because the Muslims are busy concerned, or they're upset about what Benedict is saying. Well, on the surface, that is the case. Here in 2006, and it was the 25th of September, so it's just a couple of months ago. Here Pope Benedict met with the Muslim group, and where is he? He's in the middle, the only one dressed in white, with the others all sitting around him. You see, this is the important thing of looking at pictures and symbols. And why do I say that's important? Well, 2 or 3 lectures ago, I showed you the quotation from the Freemasons themselves that said, how we will now speak in symbols because the Tower of Babel has been ruined by God changing man's tongue. In other words, from now onwards, because Nimrod was seen as the first Mason, from now onwards, we will no longer speak secretly using languages, we will use symbols. Here's an example of exactly what I'm saying. Pope Benedict XVI is welcomed on the steps of the synagogue in Köln, Germany, by Rabbi. In the background, you'll see the German Cardinal Walter Kasper. He's the president of the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity. This picture by Reuters shows the welcoming of the papacy inside the inner circles of Judaism. We've covered this in a previous lecture. But there behind is Walter Kasper, who's helping the Christians unite. This is what is known as a signal picture. Another example of this is from Loyola's cave. There you can see Loyola's cave at the Vatican. This is Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuit movement. When George Bush went to go and meet with Pope John Paul at the time, where did they sit? In front of Ignatius Loyola's image, right in front. Remember we showed you the quote that says, if everything that happens in politics happens for a reason. If it's happened, then it's been planned that way. Well, that's exactly the case in this point. Here, George Bush, you'll see dressed in black with a Pope in white. Same with the British Prime Minister, black dressed in white. What about Margaret Thatcher, Maggie Thatcher? She's such a prominent woman. Well, even she submits to black and white. And Jimmy Carter and the leaders from the Far East, black and white. Interesting to see how Tony Blair, when he met with the Pope, he gave him a Masonic handshake. You'll see there where they put the thumb on the thumb on the knuckle, being a Masonic handshake. I'll show you more of these just now. Indicates that there's a certain understanding, which the goyim, the cattle, the people on the ground don't often know. And at that meeting, horror of all horrors, Cherie Blair, Tony's wife, came dressed in white. And boy, was there an outcry. Man. And I thought to myself, why would that be? Nothing happens by chance. She knows that she has to. What on earth is going on? And boom, a couple of weeks later or a couple of months later, headlines. Blair will convert to Catholicism soon. Telegraph.co.uk. And when? 22nd of June, 2007. What about this one? Blair may become Catholic soon. His conversion from Anglican to Catholicism. And the Prime Minister has even discussed becoming a Roman Catholic deacon. Wow. See, these are the things which you are able to detect prior to certain things becoming manifest in reality. How has he now become the Middle East envoy? Well, he's certainly got a role to play there. Here it says, convert. Blair's been a Catholic for 25 years already. He's not going to be converted. It's all been a show. I'm an Anglican, my wife's a Roman Catholic, but actually underneath the ground, because of this coming together of the Catholic and the Anglican Church, as we've showed in a previous lecture, inside he's actually been not only a Catholic, but he's even thinking of becoming a deacon. He's been a deacon for a Catholic for 25 years. And that's also why when things that are filled with horror for us as the cattle on the ground, when we see images of Pope John Paul with Gorbachev, it makes sense why he can accept or be with people that we would at the time not understand what's going on. What about even the Muslims? Yasser Arafat kissing the ring of the Pope. Interesting to look at Bono there. I'll get to Bono a little bit later. Just pointing forwards in the lecture, Bono is a very, very interesting character, and we'll have to uncover what's going on there. Well, here also you have the papacy and Muslims on equal footing, bowing down to the Pope and the Pope acknowledging them in their situation. Well, in 1984, Ronald Reagan came to visit Pope John Paul II. Very interesting. We'll be understanding why he came to visit him in the lecture called An Image to the Beast. Don't miss that lecture. We'll understand why Ronald Reagan was dressed in brown. What was going on? How was this acknowledged? Well, what happened here is, even though he was supposed to be dressed in black, that's why he wore the black tie, he couldn't outwardly appear to be 100% in submission to the papacy. Because America was founded as a Protestant country. And him opening up channels to the Vatican in 1984, that blew the people's minds. So what about the Clintons? You'll often find that there's certain chin signals and hand signals. And I want to make one thing clear to you. When I speak about the two-fingered salute, or the Baphomet giving his fingers like this, or maybe some of the hand signals coming on, you cannot take one element of this, of what I'm explaining to you, and say, bomb, there's a Freemason, or bomb, there's a Jesuit, or bomb this. You've got to be very careful. All it is a trigger to wake up and be aware that they might be doing something or be part of something which most people aren't aware of. I often do a lecture and I give some of the hand signals, and if somebody were to take a photograph of me and plaster it on the website, well, they could get some pretty interesting ideas about what my focus is. So you've got to take this from a holistic perspective, but at the same time, understand that certain things are leaked out first to make sure that you understand exactly where they stand. Here, receiving communion, this is only something that can be done by somebody who is a Roman Catholic. This is in 1987, where Waliza is receiving the communion from Pope John Paul. Here's one of John Kerry receiving Holy Communion. On the top, you'll see he's wearing a suit, black suit, white shirt, and red tie. And on the bottom right, you'll see him, black suit, white shirt, blue tie. So what? So what? We'll get into that a bit later. Interesting to see that Bill Clinton accepting the host or the wafer, as is often denoted in public terms. What about Madiba? Is it possible that he can be a Roman Catholic? No, can't be, because he's associated to other religions. See, this is the problem, and this is when it becomes important to understand that there's an agenda involved. Not only is Madiba or Mr. Mandela associated to the Roman Catholic Church, or he is a Roman Catholic, otherwise he wouldn't be allowed to receive the host. He had a Hindu wedding, he had a Jewish wedding, and he was starting to fulfill this idea of this one world ecumenical religion, where it doesn't matter which God you bow down to, it's all the same thing. Here he receives the body of Christ. So what was I talking about, this black, white, red, and black, white, blue? Well, again, you cannot take it at face value as the only indication to prove that somebody's involved somewhere, but certainly it's a point to stand up and take notice, or sit up and take notice. Here you can see these are the debates that were held between Gore and Bush. You can see both of them, black, white, and a red tie. And the other time when Gore was debating Bush, Bush wore the red tie and Gore wore the blue tie. This is done for the cameras more than it's done for what's really going on in the system. If you just look at George Bush himself, you'll see sometimes he wears a blue tie, sometimes he wears a red tie. Just depends on what message and what signal he needs to send out. Just look at the George Bush and Kerry debates. Here they are arguing, both of them with a red tie, and then greeting, one with a blue and one with a red. And you see George Bush is wearing the blue tie and Kerry's wearing the red. That was on September 30th, 2004. There was another debate on October 8th, 2004, where George wore the blue tie and Kerry the red. And then on October the 13th, at the third debate, they both wore a red tie. All this is saying is the one is the victim, the one is the victor, and then the one who will become victorious gets acknowledged in secret. If you don't understand Chinese, you can't understand the language. When George Bush changed his tie color, then I thought, whoa, okay, we'll see who wins this election. And George Bush won it. When the Pope is walking, just have a look around him. You'll just see black, white, red, black, white, red, black, white, red, wherever you go. Sometimes black, white, blue. Here's even Jeb Bush meeting with the clergy, black, white, red. George Bush himself, black, white, red. Bill Clinton, black, white, red. Madiba, when he was inaugurated, black, white, red. Here's Tony Blair, black, white, red. Some of the leading Indian officials, black, white, red. Some of the Capitol Hill Senate, the majority whip, Mitch McConnell, etc. All of them either black, white, red or some shade of black, white, blue. Waiting for new law. This is Liberty's medical scheme. Stephen Marsh from Liberty Life and Liberty Medical. South African boss of, I think it's Eskom or one of the larger companies at the time, black, white, red. Just a way of identifying who's involved with what and who knows something that's, like this example says, what's Zuma hiding? When him and all his entourage are all in the same Masonic uniform, black, white, red. You see, George Bush and John Kerry were part of, or are part of, a secret organization called Skull and Bones. Now, I'm not going to get into a discussion on this in this lecture. There's just not enough time, and I'm throwing images at you that you can see and start to learn the language. Well, this secret organization is actually not so secret, or their participation in it is actually not so secret. As this example explains, it says, Wahlkampf der Schädelgrustes. So this has got to do with the secret association in the Financial Times in Germany, that secret association and the affiliations that George Bush and John Kerry have got. The Order of Skull and Bones, or 322 as it's known, is called the Order of Death. And there's certain things that happen inside these tombs where they meet, which would just raise the hair on your back. What else can we see? What other hand signals? How do we know how to identify who's going on and who's doing what? Here you'll see President Thabo Mbeki greeting the members of parliament in what might be seen as a very friendly manner. The same thing from Mantu Chabalala Msimang, one of the highest ministers in South Africa. Tony Blair with the same signal. And then in business, what you find today more and more and more is mega mergers, mega coming togethers, all these mega associations getting together, and the little guys getting squashed while the big guys are coming together. Interesting to see how Jacob Zuma is photographed in his Masonic suit, black, white, red, with his eyes lifted towards heaven. Not only is the eyes up towards heaven a Masonic signal, but also when they drop the glasses and they put it on the nose. I'll show you some pictures about that later. Do you remember in one of the earlier lectures I showed you this rock band called Jesus and the Gurus, where they were a satanic band or a heavy metal band in line with Satan? And not only were they in line with him, but they used certain rituals and satanic things which were going on inside there. Here the rock leader or the main singer is wearing that demon, Lucifer Messiah it says, and demon on top, wearing the upside down pentagram as a goat's head. There you see him with his demon on top and his black fingernails. Do you remember the hand signal that was going around in the audience at the time? It was that the two fingers up, and either with the finger on these two across or open. And open, it's supposed to mean I love you in hand signals or in sign language for deaf people. Well, again, this is one of the reasons why they would take something and use that and mutate and abuse it into a secret signal, meaning Satan himself. I'm not saying that. We take it directly from the Satanic Bible. Here it says, horned hand or the Manu Cornuto. This gesture is a satanic salute, a sign of recognition between and allegiance of members of Satanism or other unholy groups. It is a sign of recognition between those that are in the occult. It is also used at heavy metal and rock concerts to affirm their allegiance to the music's message and the band members. So this idea of the horns is something which is readily recognized. As Swali says, that is an old, well-known greeting of one of the Satanists to another. Usually the Illuminists are a lot more subtle and don't do that publicly. See, this is historically what would have happened. You don't do these signs publicly because you don't want people to really know what's going on. But as we get in closer and closer to the end of time, and as the last of the prophecies are being fulfilled, these signs are becoming more and more prevalent, and you can see them openly. This is George Bush at his inauguration. Does that look familiar? Or maybe his wife? What about at the actual table of his inauguration? Can you see the Masonic suit? Black, white, blue. And his daughter? Again. There are many more that I'm going to show you, but I want you to understand that when he's approached on this, or he's asked, why do you do that? He says, oh no, I'm a Texas football fan, and the Texas, those are the horns of the Texas whatever animal or ox or whatever, bull, I don't know. That's what they'll tell the koyim, that's what he'll tell the cattle. But secretly inside, the people understand that this is a symbol of identifying where their allegiance is. Here you have Bill Clinton doing the same thing. And John Kerry campaigning in October 2004. This is one photograph that was done of him. Please notice in front the 666. And you'll see John Kerry wearing the Masonic outfit, black, white, blue. Not only that, Dio, who's a satanic rock band, they have that symbol on the chest as Satan, who's hooking up the people and throwing them into the lake of fire. And then you've got King Abdullah with Putin. Why would King Abdullah also be a Texas fan or of the Texas American football fan? What about Prince William? Is he a Texas fan? The rock band Metallica, are they all acknowledging Texas as the favorite band or favorite sporting team? Here George Bush again openly pointing out the two fingers. Even Tom Ridge, who was the former Homeland Security Director, and John Edwards, former North Carolina Senator, Democratic Vice Presidential candidate in 2004, same thing. Yasser Arafat does the same thing. George Bush again, even Prime Minister Berlusconi. You see, this is why we need to understand how far this infiltration has taken place. Who knows this? Who knows? This is mine. Are you telling me these people are all involved in satanic things? No, I'm not. They are. This is the reason that you don't or are not taught the language. Because if you understood Chinese, you'd understand the language. What about this symbol? Has it somehow infiltrated into our children? Because that's who they're targeting. Where do we see this symbol? Do you recognize it at all? Spider-Man? What happens with Spider-Man? For Spider-Man to shoot his web out, he goes, wah, and he shoots his web out. I can't remember if it's like this, or I think it's open. He goes, wah, and he spreads his web out. And there's also this one where you have to, you get these kids' toys where you tie it to your wrist, and you have these children running around the garden going, and firing this thing. They've got no idea that they're busy with satanic things. Also the Baphomet, which we discussed earlier in the previous lecture with the 2 fingers up and 2 fingers down. Anybody that watches Yu-Gi-Oh! With a conscience will realize that it's absolutely demonic. These children's stories are becoming more and more blatant in their demonic associations. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Specifically, where they're working with tarot cards, which in itself is satanic, every time you take a card and you throw the card down, you take it with the 2 fingers, the symbol of Baphomet, and you throw the card down and you fulfill that symbol of Baphomet. They're infiltrating the children's minds. They're trying to get them to be soft towards certain things that are going to take place later on in the world. What about Christian music? We'll get into music in a second, but what about Christian music? You've got some leading figures like Michael W. Smith. You've got Amy Grant. Well, here's Amy Grant, believe it or not. On the Michael W. Smith in Concert Reunion Records 1985, on the videotape, flashing the satanic salute. Not only does she flash it, she deliberately flashes it, twice at least, on the video, to prove her allegiance. That's who I'm singing to, wow, and she sings. She's telling the people that know what to look for, she's telling them who her affiliation is. You just have to go to Anton LaVey, who's the founder of the Church of Satan, and say, excuse me, Mr. Anton LaVey, what does that signal mean to you? And he'll say, well, here it is, on the back of my satanic Bible, on the back cover of the hardcover of the satanic Bible, there it is. It'll show you exactly who it is. Why then are Charlie Bell and Jim Cantalupo doing exactly that thing? Both holding either with a thumb out or the thumb in. They're the people who own and run McDonald's. Is there somehow an evil idea, a philosophy to get people to eat something which filters rubbish into their system so that their minds get clouded? Dan Quayle, again, perfect example of a satanic ritual. What about music? Let's look at Kid Rock. There you have Kid Rock and, oh no, it couldn't be the Beatles. Yes, it is. John Lennon himself, flashing the horned cornuto, or the symbol of Satan. I could go on and on and on about all these symbols and these signs. But all I'm going to give you in this lecture is enough for you to understand the basic verbs, the basic nouns, the basic adjectives, to form a sentence so that you can listen in to the conversations of Satan, who's trying to stop you from understanding these things. What about the symbol of the ring over the eye? Well, that's a symbol of Freemasonry. Secretly, they'll send their symbols. You'll see also Robert Mugabe's always got his little cannoni behind him, sending out the signals for the world to see. Here you have the world leaders doing the same thing. And even Pope John Paul doing it. Why would Pope John Paul do that if there weren't some affiliation or some need for it? We're going to go into more of these signals and hand signals in a later lecture inside Christianity, when we discuss Christian deceptions at the end time, and then the follow-up lecture to that is signs and lying wonders. Who inside Christian circles is doing this signal of Satan and sending it up? Well, for one, it's Benny Hinn. Number two, it's Kenneth Copeland. Number three, Rodney Howard-Browne. What about Billy Graham? Is he somehow involved? What about Trinity Broadcast Network? Is that somehow involved? Well, I'm not saying they are. They're saying they are. Because every time Billy Graham appears on TBN and Paul Crouch and Jan Crouch greet him, it's a Masonic handshake with the thumb on the knuckle. Why? Can't they get their hands in correctly? No, they can. They know exactly what they're busy with. Here Billy Graham meets Dr. Robert Schuller, who we've identified in a previous lecture as a 33rd degree Freemason. These are two Freemasons acknowledging secretly but openly that they are affiliated to the satanic network. See, the best place to hide something is where? In plain sight. So if you've got the Christian people doing this, and you've got the religious people doing that, and you've got the politicians doing this, and you've got the music signals, the musicians doing that, you've got more and more of this, even if you don't physically, cognitively notice it, sinking into your subconscious. And if it's not in your life, it's in your child when he's flicking out this satanic signal for his Spider-Man or for Yu-Gi-Oh! As he spits out these tarot cards. Let me just run through some more just to show you how blatant this is. George Bush wearing his Masonic outfit, black, white, red. There his wife, she's a Texas fan. So is Paul McCartney. What about the leaders from the East wearing a Masonic outfit? Kid Rock again. There you have Bill Clinton and George Bush again and again and again. Here you have some, they look like they're from the porn industry. Kevin Spacey even. And musicians and musicians and more musicians. The music industry is full of this. Even Lisa Ling symboling or showing the symbol of association. Here you even have some of the more well-known singers. At the bottom you've got the heavy metal bands, and on the top you've got these child rock stars that have hit stardom and fame and can have anything they want in the world. They've got so much money, and children all over the world are saying, wow, Avril Lavigne, what a wonderful woman, what a wonderful girl. No, the only reason she got there is through her affiliation, and you can see exactly who that is. What about Meryl Streep? Meryl Streep? Oh, she's such a wonderful lady. She should, no, come. Well, let's just before you tell me or I tell you, let's go and ask them, right? In 2004, Angels in America, possibly the most evil TV series of all time, was aired on HBO. The directors were given the Golden Globe Awards. The movie depicted angels having sex with homosexuals and lesbians and praised communist spies like Ethel Rosenberg. Newsweek magazine ran this revealing picture of actress Meryl Streep, who starred in the movie, giving the sign of the devil just over the head of Angels in America director Mike Nichols. Often you don't know who you're dealing with until you find out who you're really dealing with. So what's this about Bono? How's Bono involved? Is Bono involved? Well, Bono is a fascinating individual. At the moment in the world, he's one of the most influential. You find him, "Can Bono save the world?" on the front of Time magazine. Not only that, you'll see him with Bill Gates, and you'll see him on the World Economic Forum. You'll see him sitting next to Bill Clinton and Kofi Annan. Who is this man? How can he get to George Bush and Jesse Helms? Well, it's quite simple when you're wearing a bent cross hanging across your chest. If you are as influential as somebody like that is, and you understand the occult symbols that I'm going to explain to you now that he sends out, and you're wearing openly for the people, insiders, to see who your affiliation is, you can get into pretty high places. Again, Bono, rock star on a mission. Not only is he on a mission, he's the only one that can put sunglasses on the Pope. Here you have him putting sunglasses on the Pope. I mean, who is this man? What gives him the power to be able to do this? Why is he with all these people? Gorbachev wearing the red tie and Bill Clinton wearing the blue tie. What about this 4664 Nelson Mandela rock concert where Bono was one of the leading promoters of it? Well, let's tell you what they say. Mandela's prison number seems to have morphed from 4664 to 46664. There was a 4664 concert. Katie Malua herself says, "I did a Nelson Mandela gig called 4664, which raised the awareness of AIDS, and I was asked by Queen, the band who are my heroes, to sing one of their songs, 'Too Much Love Will Kill You,' with them." Following the inaugural 4664 concert held in South Africa last November, it has been announced Spain will host a follow-up in August. So weird that it is now 4664, and Mandela must back the change. These are quotations. I'm not saying it. His prison number of number 46 of 1964 has somehow changed to number 46 of 664, 4664. And even in Spain themselves, on the website it'll say, following the inaugural 4664 concert, Spain is to host the second 4664 concert. How strange when you see U2 surrounding Nelson Mandela, the most loved individual in the world, that the 4664 is now open for the whole world to see. Who's this Bono character? How does he work to get into those circles? Not only that, just the other day on the 29th of March 2007, he received an honorary knighthood. Knighthood for what? "You have permission," he says, "to call me anything you want, except sir." He did suggest some alternatives. Lord of Lords was one of them. Here he is receiving it from somebody wearing the Masonic outfit. And there he is covering up which eye? The right eye. As he holds up the supposed peace sign, he holds up his badge or his award and he covers up the right eye. What's this about the right eye? Encyclopedia of Freemasonry said, "The all-seeing eye is an important symbol of the supreme being borrowed from the Freemasons of the nations of antiquity. On the same principle, the Egyptians represented Osiris, their chief deity, by the symbol of an open eye, and placed the hieroglyphic of him in all their temples." You remember that? Freemasonry discussed the eye on the $1 bill, Ordo Novo Ordo Secloris, the order, the eye of the new order of the ages, is the left eye. Why is he covering up the right eye? Well, to the ancient Egyptians, the right eye symbolized the sun and the left eye the moon. You'll remember this was fulfilled in the Passion of the Christ, where Jesus is hanging on the cross and he looks to his left and he looks straight into the camera. And that was the symbol which Mel Gibson used to as his Icon Productions or Icon Studios. It was the same where Barabbas's eye was closed, the same with the unpenitent thief, the same with Icon Studios, this Lucifer idea where Lucifer is the Holy Ghost and Satan at one and the same time. In other words, the fulfillment or the embodiment of good and evil coming together in one individual. Well, that's why Bono, and here you have the image of him, covers up his right eye. And there he gives the Masonic symbol covering his right eye. And there, receiving his award, he covers his right eye, just as Jesus was the one who had a right eye darkened. These are symbols which will start to make sense now when you look into the media and start to understand what is being sent to us. And then Nelson Mandela holding up Bono's hand, and behind him you'll clearly see the Baal Hadad of sun worship. He's also another man who's influenced and influential, even with people like Oprah, and sitting on the World Economic Forum board. What does Bono have to do with the World Economic Forum? Even Time magazine called him one of the persons of the year, next to Bill Gates and others. And Vanity Fair puts him on the cover, leaning to the left again, or leaning to the right again, showing his one eye with Queen Rania. I was blown the other day when I read this article that MSNBC explains that Bono is even seen on the shortlist for the World Bank chief. I mean, my word, 6th of March 2005, they're even thinking about Bono to become the World Bank chief? Who's involved? Why? Wherefore? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't have to make sense to you. You're not invited to the party, neither was I. Once you understand the language and you're able to listen into the conversation, you'll see more and more about who's all involved in this. We'll continue this in part 2.